we do have to talk about Rowdy because he's been a big talking point, I'd say, all season long. But I think this week it's became even louder than it has in past weeks, mainly because I think of the incidents with Riley Herbst. I think that just put more eyes on what Kyle Busch was doing in the race. And it's no secret, Kyle Busch is struggling. It's no secret, Richard Childress Racing is struggling. It's just not looking good over there right now at all. I kind of went into maybe a 10 or 12 minute spiel on my most recent version of Car on the Hauler, my post-race show on my YouTube channel. You should probably check that out as well to get even more of my thoughts, being a Rowdy fan, on this whole situation. But like I mentioned with Jim Pullman before, I do think Jim Pullman's a fantastic crew chief. He's done great work for Junior Motorsports and Justin Allgaier for many years. His family has been ingrained with racing for many times. For a long time, I should say. His dad's a local short track legend. I was very excited on these two working together, but these two have absolutely zero chemistry with one another. They have no chemistry whatsoever with one another. Kyle Busch is just not really. Kyle Busch seems like he has just no chemistry with RCR. He doesn't seem like he even wants to be there anymore. With the way his interviews go, with the way you hear him over the radio, I don't hear any fire. I hear zero fire. I don't, because that's when I get worried about Kyle Busch. When Kyle Busch is getting angry on the radio saying this car sucks, him doing the silent treatment in this race makes me feel even worse about Kyle, that he might have already given up on this year. I wouldn't, knowing Kyle Busch, he might have already given up on this year, which is just very, very unfortunate. It is a contract year. I don't think he's coming back to Richard Childress Racing. I think his career with Richard Childress Racing is over. But the issue is, where the fuck does he go next year? He's not going to race for Hendrick in the 48 car. That's not going to happen, especially with... He's not going to race. He's not going to race for Hendrick. It's just not... It's not going to happen, especially with the way he's been performing. Plus, they have Cory Day in the wings. They have Raja Carruth in the wings. They have a couple other drivers that they can maybe call up that they probably prefer over Kyle Busch in that car as well, which is very unfortunate, but it's the truth. It's just me being a realist. I think the 48 car is a pipe dream at this point for him. I think possibly his best and only options that he could have, and he might not even have these options. I really think the two options on the table potentially for him I have heard the rumors that Michael McDowell might not be back at Spire next year, so maybe he jumps into the 71 car, which would make a lot of sense. He's had a relationship with Daniel Suarez for many years. He was teammates with him. He also sold his Truck Series team to Spire Motorsports. He has a very, very close relationship with Jeff Dickerson over there at Spire Motorsports. And he's obviously been racing for Spire Motorsports in the Truck Series in a couple of races this year, plus last year. So I could definitely see that happening. I could also, the only other thing that I could see him legitimately being somewhat of a contender, and it would probably have to be a couple years down the road until he actually becomes a contender, but I can see him joining Kaulig Racing and getting ahead of Dodge coming into the Cup Series, because Dodge have talked about going to the Cup Series in 2027. I think the more realistic thing is 2028, but maybe if Kyle Busch would sign to Kaulig Racing, I would assume Dodge would really want Kyle Busch, mainly because Kyle Busch was the first Cup Series driver to win with Toyota, and he was a big part in building up that program that first year at Joe Gibbs Racing. He won like 8 races or something like that, 9 races, some insane number in 2008 in his first season over at Joe Gibbs Racing, and just really put Toyota on the map. And I think Dodge would probably want a driver like that. Plus, Kyle Busch has raced at Kaulig Racing before in the Xfinity Series, when it was called the Xfinity Series, when Kaulig actually had a team in the Xfinity Series, now known as, of course, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. I think him and AJ are probably pretty good friends as well, and I think he probably gets along with a lot of the people over there. So I would say those are probably his only two options after this year. But Kyle Busch has not been good in the next-gen car as well. He wasn't good in the next-gen car even when he was at Gibbs. He's just never really understood the next-gen car. It's just been a real difficult transition for him. very similar to Chase Elliott, but I think over the last year and a half, Chase Elliott has finally figured out the next-gen car, and you see him running the top 5, top 10 every week at this point, while Kyle Busch is lucky to get a top 20 right now. And this is all coming from Kyle Busch, a Kyle Busch fan. I've been a Kyle Busch fan for over 20 years, and it's really difficult to watch. It's reminding me a lot of Bobby Labonte when he fell off. I'm getting flashbacks because Bobby Labonte was my favorite driver growing up, and I eventually switched over to Kyle Busch. But I want to get the boys' thoughts on this, and I'll start with Cory on this one. Cory, how are we overall just feeling about Rowdy, Kyle Busch, and his performance so far, not just this season, but his overall career in a next-gen car at Richard Childress Racing? And do you have any predictions for his future?
I mean, it started off so good when he went to the 8 car, got the win in can't think of the racetrack right now, California. Yeah, Auto Club. Yeah, got a win at Auto Club. It started off so good. He was running well that year, and then just these last 2 years has just been pretty awful. To summarize it, but yeah, I think you nailed it on the head with those 2 teams that you mentioned. The only other one I was thinking about, I don't see it happening just because of the Corey Heim situation, but I could see when Legacy gets that 3rd charter, if that Legacy can choose between getting a veteran Toyota driver or a veteran driver with Toyota experience in Kyle Busch, or get the guy that's going to bring the money in Riley Herbst. And I think those are 2 decent options that Legacy can choose between if Kyle Busch ends up being a free agent. But I think the 2 you mentioned are pretty good too. I think the Spire one is the most obvious choice.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Spire Motorsports choice would make by far the most sense because you have to keep in mind, Spire Motorsports, the building that team is located in is Kyle Busch Motorsports. That used to be his building. So I think it would make a lot of sense for him to race for Spire. And Spire have been really good about finding different sponsorships. And it seems like HendrickCars.com are just willing to throw their money wherever as long as it's a Chevrolet team. They're willing to throw their money to whoever they really support. And I just don't think that 48 car would be a legitimate option for Rowdy with all the options that Hendrick has. But I do think at the same time that Rick Hendrick himself would like to support Kyle Busch because he always felt like Kyle Busch was kind of the one that got away, and he really had no choice. It was either Kyle Busch or Junior, and Kyle Busch was fresh into the sport at that point, and Dale Jr. is fucking Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's going to sell all the merch in the world, and he's also a very talented race car driver. So I think it was probably a no-brainer at that point to pick Dale Jr., and he didn't know how great Kyle Busch was going to end up being. So I think that's something that Hendrick would like to support. So I would definitely see Spire. You did give another suggestion of Legacy, and ultimately I like where your head is at. I overall don't, and I would like to see it because I wouldn't mind seeing him back with Toyota. I think Toyota would really love to have him back. Toyota were really unhappy about that whole entire situation going down. They really wanted Kyle Busch back badly, and they were willing to move mountains to get Kyle Busch back. It just didn't quite work out. So I think Toyota would want him back. I just think Legacy at the end of the day would probably pick the driver that brings in more money. I would personally say mainly because it would be a 3-car operation at that point, and Legacy Motor Club have had 0 success. They're running a little bit better this year, and they ran okay last year, but they're not competing for wins. They're not even competing for top 10s on a weekly basis. So having 3 cars with drivers that are finishing outside the top 15 every week, you need someone to pay the bills because obviously the person's going to pay the bills at that point. So I think it would make a lot of sense for them to bring in Riley Herbst potentially, or a different driver that brings more money to the table, because Kyle Busch doesn't really bring any money to the table, unfortunately, at this point in his career, which is crazy to me. And that's just the way the NASCAR business works right now, unfortunately. Because look at Denny. Denny was trying to race the O'Reilly Series race at Darlington a couple weeks ago, and he apparently couldn't find sponsorship. He couldn't find someone to sponsor Denny Hamlin at his best racetrack. So that just really says everything you need to know about NASCAR and business right now. But Tyler, how are we overall just feeling about Rowdy's career at RCR, his career in a next-gen car, and how do you think the season's going? And also, if you want to, do you have any predictions for his future?
Well, we all know that unfortunately his time with RCR is pretty much over. I mean,
It's
that's
finito.
been a it's been sad to watch, unfortunately. I mean, even I have a piece of his RCR car on the wall behind me, and I still am sad to see it happen. So it's not what we any of us wanted to see. It's not what any of us expected to see, but it is what it is, right? But at the end of the day, I don't see Kyle doing anything to make his life worse. And unfortunately, there's a lot of teams that are just a couple spots behind him right now that are open for him. So I don't know what his plan is. I'd like to see him in the 48. We all know that, but we all probably know that's never going to happen.
Yeah,
As much as I
I would love to
I
see it.
believe he's owed it. I think he's owed it personally. I think at the end of the day, Rick Hendrick got his money from Junior, got what he needed, and he should give Kyle his dues. But that's another conversation, right? Rick and loyalty is something else sometimes. Um, but at the end of the day, I want Kyle to succeed. I want to see him get at least one more win, and I want to see him in this sport until his son comes along. So I don't know about you guys, but I'd love to see him at least race trucks with Brexton.
I think no matter what, I think no matter what, how these next couple years goes, even if he randomly retires, I can definitely see him coming out of retirement to race trucks with his son Brexton. I think that's going to happen no matter what, and someone's going to sign him anytime he gets into a truck. He's very competitive, so I think he would get signed like that. And you were talking about Hendrick with his loyalty, but that's one of the reasons why I think the most likely option would be Spire, and I think that just makes the most sense because Spire having that very close relationship with Hendrick Motorsports and Rick Hendrick at this point. It's just maybe if they had the 5 cars like they used to, maybe I can see Kyle Busch ending up on Hendrick Motorsports getting a 5th car. Maybe even then I would probably doubt it. But with how many young prospects that Hendrick have in their line of drivers, like Corey Day is kicking at this point, I'd say Corey Day is probably going to race that car next year with just how well he's doing. He's kind of earning it at this point with how well he's doing in the O'Reilly series, and clearly his ceiling is extremely high. But if Kyle Busch goes over to that 71 car, I guarantee you're going to see him race a HendrickCars.com car for at least a couple of races throughout the year because Rick Hendrick he loves Kyle. He loves Kyle Busch, and he would love to have Kyle Busch on his team again. It just wouldn't really make much sense at this point. Maybe if he never went to RCR and just stayed at Gibbs or something like that, I could maybe see that happening. And maybe 2 years ago when he got 3 wins, I could have maybe seen that happen. Heck, I was the one predicting that that would happen 2 years ago. But at this point, he hasn't won in 2 years, and he's at this point Austin Dillon's honestly been the best driver at that team this year. And that's coming from a Kyle Busch fan. Austin Dillon's outperformed Kyle Busch this year, in my opinion. I don't know how the points have looked. I don't know how the points are looking right now. But from me just from the eye test, Austin Dillon's been the best driver at Richard Childress Racing this year. And that says a lot. I think Austin Dillon's a decent driver, but he ain't no Kyle Busch. That really just says how much Kyle Busch is struggling. And at this point, I think his head is just completely out of it. Because, like I said earlier, if Kyle Busch is screaming and yelling on the radio, he's obviously upset and he's obviously pissed off, but clearly his head is still in it. The fact that Jim Pullman is going off on the radio and Kyle Busch is dead silent, that tells me Kyle Busch is already done. He's already checked out. That's just my opinion. I've watched Kyle Busch my whole entire life. I've never heard Kyle Busch so silent. Like he's quiet. Even when he's complaining at this point, he's not yelling. He's like, the car just sucks. You know, he's under his breath almost. He's just so distraught and he's just so demotivated, I would say. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. He's demotivated as a driver at RCR in the number 8 car, and it's really tough to see. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Kyle Busch, his career at RCR, his career in a next-gen car, and where does his career go from here? I really like what we came up with here with Spire, with Colleague, with Legacy as a potential as well. Let us know your thoughts, or maybe he retires. I wouldn't at this point. I wouldn't even be surprised about that. But let us know your thoughts in the comments.